Wait, let me record this now. So first things first, at some point, someone may come knock on my door to do a temperature check for me. So if I have to leave, it's because the government wants to check my temperature. So sorry if that happens. Beyond that, I've sent everyone except for Pachana her feedback. I'm almost done with it, Pachana. So at some point today, I can finish it up and get it to you. Hopefully, did you get a look at what I did for you, Alvin?
The IA feedback?
Come again? Yeah, the feedback.
Yeah. I saw it and I am doing my IA work.
Okay, good.
I was doing, yeah, not now.
Okay, perfect. And I know you're working on it, Haley. And Brad, did you get what I sent you?
God.
Yeah, there's not much you need to do, so you're in pretty good shape. Okay, and Pashana, I will do yours. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. So we've been looking at aggregate demand. We were looking at aggregate demand, like the non-price determinants, the things that they're not really called non-price determinants, they're just things that can change the actual level of the aggregate demand, shifting it either to the right or to the left. So we mentioned previously here. We mentioned this. Things like income and interest rates. We saw, if you follow the news at all, this actually just happened today in the U.S. The Fed, which is the bank that controls the interest rates in the United States, or the organization that controls the interest rates in the United States, actually cut the federal interest rate to 0, which is insane to do. Doesn't really happen that often. And one of the reasons why they do it is because they want people to borrow money so that their businesses don't go out of business, because they're really worried that people are going to go out of business as a result of everything that's happening. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they cut the interest rates the way they did. So you could actually look at that as potentially an IA article to do. You wouldn't have enough knowledge yet to do it, but you could start to think about some potential IAs. So we did not get to this yet. So looking at other ways that we can change aggregate demand. And again, aggregate demand is total consumption within the economy of goods and services. So if people's real income is going up, then they're going to be able to consume more. And then as a result, they're going to be able to, if this happens throughout the economy, then it's going to result in a shift of AD to the right. So there is a potential there for, if enough people's income go up, then it could change the aggregate economy. Now keep in mind that if it has to be a large group, right? It can't just be like one person's income, because we're looking at the aggregate, we're looking at the total. Another way for people's like real income, or in this case, their wealth to change, is when things that they buy become relatively cheaper. So if you look at like the housing market, for example, if you're able to buy a house at a lower amount than you previously could have, then it means that you could potentially have an increase in your wealth. Or if you already own a house and the value of that house is increasing, then you would see your wealth increase as well. So a lot of people, the value of their worth is not in the amount of cash that they have in their bank account, but instead is in the value of the assets that they have. So like things like a car or a house or stocks. These things have value. So when those values change for everyone, then it could result in a shift of AD depending on what happens. So, like recently, you've seen changes in the US stock market to go down, and as a result, people have lost money. So that would be a loss of wealth in the US economy, and really it's happening all over the world. So there's been a loss of wealth all around the world, which is why banks and governments are looking to cut the interest rate to encourage the economy to grow. Okay, so that's one thing, wealth, dealing with your real income, but then also the value of things that you own and the changes in those values. Okay. Changes in consumer confidence. When people feel good about this past 2 months is a great example. If people feel good about the economy, they spend more money. When people are happy with the way things are going and they feel safe, people spend money. When people don't feel safe and when there's a lot of uncertainty, then people don't spend money. And if there's enough people who are worried about the economy, then it could result in a shrinking of the GDP as a result. So you just have to look at what's happening in China and in Hong Kong. Like it's very easy to see the economies of those places shrinking because people aren't spending money. Like if you look at Hong Kong, their tourism business is just fallen off a cliff, and that's because people aren't confident. They're not going to travel. They're not going to spend money because it's not safe. And if that's widespread and it happens for a long period of time, it can lead to a contraction in the economy, which it is as well. Okay. Last one, I believe, is dealing with debt. If there's a large amount of debt within the economy, it can lead to a slowing down of the economy. Because when people pay back debt, it doesn't count as spending. Because that money isn't going into the economy, it's going into a bank. So if people are paying back debt, then it could lead to a slowing down of the economy. So it's good when interest rates are really low because people can borrow money and spend. But at some point, people need to pay that money back. A loan is not free money. You have to pay it back. So you want people to borrow money to spend to improve their business or to buy a house or whatever it is. But if they're not able to then pay it back, it becomes a problem for the economy because then you'll see spending increase for a short period of time, but then people have to then pay that money back and that will then slow the economy down. That's why things like changes in interest rate are considered short-term solutions to the economy, because they only work for so long before it stops working. It kind of has the opposite effect within the economy. So in the short term, what the US is doing to lower interest rate might increase the aggregate demand of the US economy, but in the long term, it could have a negative impact, because people will eventually, and companies will eventually have to pay back that debt. Oh, hello, Denny. Any questions on this? We good? Yes. Kind of luckily, we have a lot of examples of some of this impact with some of the stuff that's happening. Unfortunately, it is quite negative, but you do have a lot of current examples of some of this stuff. All right. Okay, so this is looking at, I updated this with the most recent stuff I could find, but this is looking at consumer confidence. And obviously towards the end of 2019, you saw a pretty big drop in consumer confidence, but that also coincided with the starting of the virus. And if this continued on for a couple months, you would imagine how much lower it probably is. So if you see indexes like this that show consumer confidence, you need to be able to relate this level of confidence to aggregate demand. And understanding that a drop in consumer confidence is going to be linked to changes in aggregate demand. This is just one example. We'll skip the con video. Actually, that's a practice. We won't do that yet. All right, so we talked about interest rates and how they could potentially change levels of aggregate demand, and just showing you on a graph here kind of what that'll look like. So what you see here is on the y-axis, you've got interest rates, and then on the x-axis, you've got levels of investment. So as interest rates go down, levels of investment are going to go up. And that is what explains the reason why aggregate demand increases when interest rates go down, because the level of investment is going up. So companies are investing when, in theory, when interest rates go down, companies are going to invest in the improvement of their company. So interest rates mean that they can borrow money, which means that they can build new factories or buy more machines or do whatever. Like, they have that ability to invest because interest rates go down. And that's why the US Federal Reserve yesterday cut US interest to zero, is because they're worried that the US economy will slow down. So they cut it, which with the hope of lowering interest rates will cause an increase in level of investment. But obviously things aren't that simple, and there's a lot of things that need to happen. You can cut interest rates all you want, but if people aren't spending money, then it doesn't really matter. So that's the basic idea behind it. What else we have here? Change the national level. Technological changes. So yeah, companies will invest in technology so that they can become more efficient and more competitive. So for the HL students, you can think about like economies of scale, that when interest rates go down, companies can invest, which in theory will increase their economies of scale. So that's a good thing for companies because it means that they can invest and produce cheaper products and more products there, and hopefully that then is passed on to consumers and things like that. But like consumers, businesses also have to feel secure. So even if interest rates are low, if a business is worried about the potential of not being able to pay back a loan, then they might not take it. So you can lower interest rates all you want, but if people are uncertain about the future, then they're less likely to invest, which is what you're seeing now as well. Is companies are very worried about investing in the future because they're worried about what that future might hold. So why would you increase your capacity to produce when you're not sure if the demand will ever be at that level? So you kind of have to wait for the demand to come back before people start to be willing to invest again. So it's difficult because you lower interest rates to get people to invest, but people aren't going to invest unless they feel comfortable, which is the reason why you cut the interest rates in the first place. So it's all kind of connected together into this like interwoven thing. I couldn't imagine you ever need to draw this diagram, but it is in the course, I guess. Because there are just so many other ways to show the relationship between interest rates and levels of investment that I wouldn't think that you would ever show it this way. Kind of as we move forward through all this, you'll kind of see that we don't really need to show it this way. But yes, you could if you wanted to. Anything? I've been talking and haven't heard much.
I wonder, here the interest rate is whether nominal interest rate or real interest rate. Or both.
When the IB says like interest rate, I don't know which interest rate they're actually talking about. They tend to just kind of take a generic approach to it, and I don't remember ever seeing like a differentiation within the IB curriculum of real versus nominal. We just tend to call it interest rate, unfortunately. But I can take a look and see if they actually do differentiate between nominal and.
So we don't have Fisher equation, something like that, right?
No.
Oh, simple.
I'll put that down in my notes just in case. And I'll take a look. Okay. So if we go back and we look quickly at, where is it? Somewhere around here. Here it is. If we go back and look at the equation, right, we've got consumption, we've got investment, we've got government spending, right? So we're now looking at government spending. And it's actually something we build on a little bit more. Some of the HL students, we talk a little bit more about this, about the impact of government spending. We talk about something what's called a multiplier effect, which is this idea that spending can lead to more spending. But for today, when you're evaluating action, and I actually put this on some of your IA comments, that you need to be balanced. You need to talk about the other side. You can't just focus on one side of the argument. And that's very true when you're talking about government spending, is this idea of what is the best approach? Should government spend more money through what's called fiscal policy, which we'll talk about eventually? Or should the government not spend money and cut taxes and let individuals spend money? So these are the two approaches. You've got what's called a market-oriented policy, which is this idea that you let the people decide what's supposed to happen. I don't know if I have hold on, let me double check, see if I have a slide on these. I do. I do have a slide. But yeah, the basic idea is what's called market-oriented policies, which means you let the individual decide what to do with their money instead of letting the government decide what to do with the money. Or you could take a governmental approach and let the government tax people, take that money, and then redistribute it to people who might be in need or to projects that might need to be done. So there's two approaches. And that's what you need to think about when you're evaluating a lot of this stuff is, how do I balance my argument? I need to acknowledge that there is another side. You might like to say the best way to improve the economy is for the government to spend money. Okay, great. That's a good argument. But what is the other person going to argue? What is the opposite side of that? So you need to, when we're going through this, you need to kind of think about both sides of it so that you can talk about a balanced approach. Because what you'll see in a lot of the macro questions that you get is the question itself will indicate a side. So it'll say like, discuss the view that expansionary fiscal policy is the best approach. So it's picked a side for you. But in that argument, you need to talk about the other side. So like if you're saying, discuss the view that apple juice is better than orange juice, you can't just talk about apple juice. You have to mention the other side. And the same thing is true in this. Like if you want to argue something, you have to prove the other side wrong. And especially in macro, you have to do that. So you have to understand both sides of the story. And if you think about a lot of countries, they have two sides. The US, you have the Republicans and you have the Democrats. And they have two sides to how they spend money. The Republicans are very market-oriented and want tax cuts to grow the economy. The Democrats take the opposite approach, and they want the government to tax wealthier people and then redistribute that income to people who are poorer and use that money to buy things and pay for things. So these are two approaches in the US economy. Now there's a lot in the middle, but those are the two approaches. And I would imagine, I don't know every country, but there are two approaches in most democratic countries. So when you're thinking about examples, you can think about the US, or you can think about your own country and think about what two parties are there, what two sides are there. There's the liberal side and there's more of the conservative side. Which side argument are you going to take? And what is the other side? What are the values in the other side? You can't just say the other side's an idiot, they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing. That's not how it works. There is value in the other side, so you have to acknowledge it. You have to be balanced in this. All right. How are we doing on time? Too bad. And then the last part of the equation is exports and imports. We've kind of talked about this already. Exports are things that are going out of the economy and are bringing in money. So when you import an item, you import money. And then an import is things that are bought in your country which aren't from that country. Every country exports and imports. Some countries rely on them more heavily than others. So China is very export heavy, whereas the US is very import heavy. So some countries play different roles. In this, we talk a lot more about this in international economics. And then there's a relationship between exports and imports and things like exchange rates and things like that as well. So for now, just have a general idea of them, and then we build on these ideas a little bit later in the course as well. Okay. Questions? Anything?
Oh, I have some problem with doing some interview with some professors since, like, like the Korean problem is that university cannot open their school. Their universities and they're doing just online lectures still, and they have so many problems to make a video, like how to make the syllabus, something like that. So usually they said it's impossible to do some interview with me.
Yep.
So I'm not sure whether I can do that.
Can you like email questions and get typed responses?
But the problem is that like they don't have time to do that since they need to make a video, they need to make a syllabus themselves. I mean, the old professors, they need to do that. So they have so many works, they don't know what to do exactly. And yeah, they said this is so.
Well, hopefully, I guess you just wait.
Maybe I can later after this.
Yeah, hopefully after this stuff calms down in a month, you can wait and it'll get. Oh no, spilled a little water. Hopefully you can wait and it'll get a little bit better. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I can really say. Work on other parts of your IA. Or your E, not IA. Anything else I can do? Quickly looking at the calendar, I sent you kind of a detailed stuff. We'll do a little HL work tomorrow. Thursday we can have another class on Thursday. Well, actually, we don't need to have class on Thursday. We'll see about Thursday. Right now, I don't have Thursday as a live lesson. We can make it one if we need to, but right now we don't have to. So we'll kind of see how it goes from there. And then Friday, your IA is due, and you need to make sure that you upload it to Manufacture that day. We won't have any class on Friday, and you could just work on your IA and go from there. Okay. Anything else? No. All right. Well, I will let you guys go. Thank you for attending, and I will see you guys a bit later.
Bye.
Bye.